Have you ever found yourself stuck in traffic, fuming at the driver who just cut you off without a signal? Or perhaps you've been in a meeting, listening to a colleague drone on, making points that are irrelevant and time-wasting, and you feel a hot surge of frustration building in your chest. Maybe it's a family member who, despite your best efforts, seems to have a PhD in pushing your buttons, finding the one insecurity you have and poking it with relentless precision. We have all been there. We live in a world teeming with people we perceive as foolish, inconsiderate, lazy, or just plain wrong. We tell ourselves, I'm not the problem, they are. It's a simple, seductive narrative. It absolves us of responsibility and casts us as the noble victim in a world of incompetence. But what if that narrative, the very story that gives you comfort, is the greatest obstacle to your growth, your happiness, and your strength? What if the source of your frustration isn't the traffic, the colleague, or the family member? What if the problem is you? There was a Roman emperor who commanded legions, who held the fate of millions in his hands, and who every single day had to deal with an endless parade of liars, sycophants, schemers, and fools. This man was Marcus Aurelius, and in the private journal he wrote a line so brutally honest, so contrary to our most cherished excuses, that it has the power to genuinely piss you off. It's a statement that feels like a slap in the face. But if you can withstand the initial sting, if you can let the anger subside and truly grapple with its meaning, it will transform you. The emperor wrote, "It's silly to try to escape other people's faults. They are inescapable. Just try to escape your own." Let that sink in for a moment. All that anger you feel towards the bad driver, the incompetent coworker, the manipulative relative, Marcus Aurelius calls your attempt to escape it silly. He dismisses your righteous indignation as a fool's errand. His focus isn't on the injustice you perceive, it's on you. The inescapable conclusion of his logic is that the real work isn't fixing the world, but fixing yourself. And that is infuriating. Why? Because it feels profoundly unfair. We can see their faults so clearly. The driver's recklessness was a danger to everyone. The colleague's rambling wasted a dozen people's time. The relative's comments were intentionally cruel. These are objective facts, are they not? To be told that we should ignore these transgressions and instead look inward feels like a betrayal of justice. It challenges our ego, which thrives on being right. It strips us of our victimhood, which can be a strangely comfortable cloak to wear. And that is a terrifying prospect for most. It's far easier to diagnose the faults in others than to confront the possibility that our reactions, our anger, our impatience, our hurt, are our own deep-seated failings. The quote pisses you off because it tells you to stop pointing your finger at the world and to point it directly at your own chest. You are the problem. This psychological reflex to blame others is a powerful defense mechanism. Our brains are wired for cognitive ease, and the simplest story is always the most attractive. The story that they are wrong and I am right is clean, simple, and requires no difficult self-examination. To admit that our reaction is the problem introduces a painful cognitive dissonance. It means holding two conflicting ideas. The other person was objectively wrong, yet my suffering is my own fault. This complexity is uncomfortable. Blame is an external projection of our own internal discomfort. It's a way of offloading the heavy burden of responsibility onto someone else. It protects the fragile ego from the admission that it is not in perfect control, that it is vulnerable, and that it has work to do. So we cling to blame because it's easy, it feels righteous, and it keeps the messy, difficult work of self-improvement at a safe distance. But this protection is an illusion. It's a cage we build around ourselves, bar by bar, with every complaint and every surge of indignation. But this is where the transformation begins. The moment you move past the anger and begin to unpack the profound wisdom in the Stoic command, you start to reclaim a power you never knew you had. The Stoics, above all else, were pragmatists. They were concerned with what works, and what they understood with piercing clarity is a concept known as the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. The faults of other people, their character, their choices, their habits, their beliefs, fall squarely into the category of things that are not up to us. You can scream at traffic all day, but you will not make a single driver more considerate. You can fume about your coworkers' incompetence, but your internal rage will not magically grant them wisdom. To invest your energy, your peace, and your emotional well-being in trying to control the uncontrollable is, as Marcus said, silly. It is a guaranteed path to a life of perpetual frustration, anxiety, and powerlessness. You become a puppet, and the random, flawed actions of every person you meet are the strings. So what does it mean to escape your own faults? Your faults in the Stoic sense are not your character flaws in the way you might think. They are your uncontrolled reactions. They are your knee-jerk judgments. They are the automatic anger, the reflexive anxiety, the habitual impatience. The fault of the other driver was their bad driving. Your fault was the rage that followed, the rage that spiked your blood pressure, ruined your mood for the next hour, and replayed in your head long after the incident was over. You failed to escape your own tendency towards anger. The fault of your colleague was their lack of preparation. Your fault was the simmering resentment and the judgmental thoughts that consumed your mind, preventing you from thinking productively or even listening for a potential nugget of value. You failed to escape your own impatience and arrogance. The fault of your relative was their cruel tongue. Your fault was allowing their words to penetrate your peace of mind, to trigger your insecurities, and to dictate your emotional state. You failed to escape your own vulnerability to the opinions of others. Every time you are disturbed, it is not the external event itself that is the problem, but your judgment about it. This is the core of the transformation. The event is just a neutral stimulus. The other person's action is just a fact in the world, like a rock or a tree. It is the meaning you assign to it, the story you tell yourself about it, that creates the suffering. And that story, that judgment, is entirely within your control. This is the path to building what the Stoics call the inner citadel, a fortress of the mind so strong, so well fortified with reason and perspective, that the arrows of the external world simply bounce off its walls. The faults of others become like bad weather. You acknowledge them, you might take practical steps to shield yourself, like bringing an umbrella, but you don't get angry at the rain for falling. It's just what rain does, and flawed people, they will act according to their nature. They will be inconsiderate, they will be foolish, they will be frustrating. That is what they do. It is inescapable. Your job is not to command the clouds to part. Your job is to build a shelter. Let's make this practical. Think of that annoying coworker. The old way is to let their actions dictate your mood. They are late, you get angry. They miss a deadline, you feel stressed. They speak foolishly, you feel contempt. In this model, they are your master. The Stoic way, the way of escaping your own faults, is different. When they are late, you see it not as a personal insult, but as an opportunity. You can use those 10 minutes to review your own notes, to meditate, to answer an important email. You control your time. You escape the fault of impatience. When they miss a deadline, instead of flying into a rage, you calmly assess the situation. What is the practical impact? What steps can be taken to mitigate it? You focus on the problem, not the person. You escape the fault of uncontrolled anger. You address the issue professionally, focusing on the work, not on their character. You maintain your tranquility. You are in control. Or consider the critical family member. The old way is to get defensive, to argue back, to let their words wound you. You are playing their game on their turf. The Stoic way is to practice a kind of emotional jujitsu. You can listen to their criticism and treat it as raw data. Is there a grain of truth in it, however poorly delivered, that you could use for your own improvement? If so, you have just turned an attack into a free lesson. If not, you can see their words for what they are, a reflection of their own unhappiness, their own fears, their own faults. You can choose to respond with quiet patience or not to respond at all. You refuse to let their poison become your own. You escape the fault of being emotionally dependent on the approval of others. You realize that their opinion cannot hurt you unless you consent to be hurt, and you withhold that consent. This is not weakness. This is the highest form of strength. It is the freedom that comes from radical self-accountability. Furthermore, consider the ripple effect of your own uncontrolled reactions. When you fail to escape your own fault of anger or impatience, you don't just harm yourself. Your outburst becomes a new external event for someone else. Your sharp reply to a colleague creates a tense atmosphere for the entire team. Your frustrated sigh at your partner casts a pall over the evening. Your road rage might provoke the other driver into an even more dangerous action. In this way, your failure to manage your inner world contributes to the very external chaos you despise. You become another one of the flawed people for someone else to deal with. By surrendering to your initial reaction, you perpetuate the cycle of negativity. Escaping your own faults is therefore not just an act of self-preservation, it is an act of social responsibility. It is your contribution to creating a calmer, more rational world, starting with the only part of it you truly command, yourself. This inward turn also cultivates a surprising and powerful form of empathy. When you are constantly engaged in the difficult work of spotting and correcting your own faults, your own flashes of ego, your own moments of laziness, your own irrational fears, you become intimately familiar with the human condition. You see in yourself the same raw materials that constitute the faults of others. When you see someone act out of insecurity, you can recognize it because you have confronted your own. When you see someone procrastinate, you understand the pull of inertia because you have fought it yourself. This doesn't mean you condone their harmful actions, but it does replace harsh judgment with a sense of understanding. You begin to see others not as villains, but as fellow strugglers, equally caught in the web of their own unexamined reactions. This compassionate perspective is a source of immense strength, freeing you from the corrosive effects of contempt and resentment. This idea isn't exclusive to the Stoics. The great psychoanalyst Carl Jung once remarked, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That irritation is a signal. It's a flashing red light on your internal dashboard, pointing not to a flaw in the other person, but to an unexamined part of yourself. The anger you feel at a lazy person might reveal your own deep-seated fear of being unproductive. The contempt you feel for a boastful person might point to your own insecurities about your achievements. The world becomes a mirror. Every person you meet, especially the ones who piss you off, offers you a chance to see yourself more clearly, to identify the faults within your own mind that you must escape. This leads to an even more profound Stoic concept, amor fati, or the love of one's fate. This isn't just about passively tolerating the faults of others. It's about actively embracing them as a necessary and even beneficial part of your journey. These frustrating people, these inconvenient events, they are not obstacles on your path. They are the path. They are your sparring partners, provided by the universe to help you train your virtue. The inconsiderate driver is your opportunity to practice patience. The manipulative relative is your chance to strengthen your emotional boundaries. The incompetent colleague is your test of leadership and calm problem solving. When you adopt this mindset, nothing is truly negative. Every challenge becomes a curriculum designed for your own growth. You stop wishing for a smoother road and start being grateful for the rough terrain that makes you a stronger traveler. So how, in the heat of the moment, do you actually do this? The key is to practice what the Stoics call the art of ascent, which begins with a simple, powerful action, the pause. When the external event happens, the insult is hurled, the mistake is made, a space opens up between the stimulus and your response. In that space, however brief, lies your freedom. The untrained mind collapses this space instantly into an automatic, emotional reaction. The trained mind holds it open. In that pause, you must become a detective of your own thoughts. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What story am I telling myself about this event? Is that story true? Is my impending reaction going to serve me or harm me? This conscious interrogation breaks the spell of automaticity. It allows you to withhold assent from the initial, flawed impression and to choose a reasoned, virtuous response instead. This pause is your workshop for escaping your own faults. Now, before you go, to illustrate this episode, let us consider an ancient story, the parable of the king and the shoes. There once lived a king in a prosperous land who was afflicted with a strange and terrible ailment. The soles of his feet were so sensitive that the slightest pebble or thorn would cause him excruciating pain. His life became a misery. He could not walk in his beautiful gardens or inspect his kingdom without suffering. Determined to solve his problem, he summoned his wisest advisors and issued a decree. You are to cover every road and every path in my entire kingdom with the finest leather, he commanded. Not a single stone shall be left exposed. My feet must be protected. The advisors were aghast. The task was impossible. It would require the hides of countless animals and would bankrupt the kingdom. The logistics were a nightmare. But the king was adamant. As the court despaired, a humble court jester, known for his simple but often profound wisdom, asked for an audience with the king. Your Majesty, the jester said, bowing low, I have a much simpler solution to your problem. One that will not cost the kingdom its fortune, nor require years of labor. The king, annoyed but curious, demanded to hear it. The jester smiled and presented the king with a small, oddly shaped piece of leather. Instead of trying to cover the entire earth in leather, he said, why not simply cover your own feet? He then showed the king how to fashion the leather into a pair of simple shoes. The king was stunned into silence. He slipped on the crude shoes and took a tentative step. Then another. He walked out of his palace, across the gravel courtyard, and into his gardens. He felt nothing but the soft comfort of the leather. The sharp stones and thorns were still there, but they no longer had the power to harm him. In that moment, the king understood. His problem was not the roughness of the world, but the vulnerability of his own feet. So the next time you feel that familiar surge of anger at someone else's failing, pause. Hear the words of the emperor echoing across 2 millennia. It's silly to try to escape other people's faults. They are inescapable. Just try to escape your own. Let the initial sting of the accusation fade and feel the power that comes with it. See the sharp stone on the path for what it is. And instead of cursing it, look down and check your shoes. Ask yourself, what fault within me is this event revealing? Is it my impatience, my ego, my insecurity? And what can I do right now to escape that fault and walk on undisturbed? That is where your true work lies. That is the path to transformation.